Good morning, Carol Martine again, welcoming you back to my studio. And today we are going to do the third and last part of our color explosion. I have done a few additional things to this piece because I didn't feel that many of you might be interested in seeing the nuts and bolts part of this experiment. The last time we saw this, it was a pencil sketch, and I covered my pencil sketch with permanent marker lines. I added some stenciled flowers using light molding paste. I did some stamping, as you can note here, with permanent ink using a very fine script stamp, which is one of my favorites. I spent some time increasing the color in some of the areas around the piece using neocolors and a gesso and water mix to blend them in. Circles were applied with the three primary colors that I have used throughout the piece. I then used my elegant writer to outline the script areas on the piece and applied water to that in order to soften the edges of the lines. I will show you now what an easy job it is to get this effect. The first time I worked on the outside of the line and let the elegant writer bleed out. This time I'm going to try to get some of the color from the marker to bleed in. Now this is dry, it's been dry for days, but elegant writer makes miracles when applied just with a water brush to the very tip of the line. As you can see, we can bring down some nice shadowing into the box to soften the edges. You can bring out as much or as little of that ink as you like, and as you can see, the colors that come out are blues and greens. I kind of think that this is another art miracle because of the lovely coloration. Now, of course, you're not seeing it as clearly as if it were on a lighter background, but you'll note how it is definitely softening the lines and pulling the shading into the script box. I'm treating it quite as though it were ordinary watercolor, which I guess for all intents and purposes it is, although we're pulling ink in this time. So you can see the difference between this box and the one at the top, in which I have only done that on the outside. And I'll do a little bit more now to bring out some more of the color from the pen, and I think you'll be able to see how the potential of this wonderful, elegant writer. Now let's turn over and see the additions that I applied to the other half of our piece. Here is our girl. And you can see that I have made some additions. First thing that I did was to apply some neck stenciling using 3 shades of my purple Ceramcoat liquid acrylic. I also brought this design over onto this side, and as you can see, our water is moving over here. And you can see that the color that comes from this black pen is a lovely shade of aqua. I think I'd better dry this side a bit more. And a small spot up at the top. Because of the rule of 3s, in nature, for some wonderful reason, decides to work in odd numbers. So we have 3 areas of stenciling. I used my white Express pen, paint pen, to add highlights around her eyes in white. Here, over her eye, under her eye, around the inner section of her eye, a small dot into the corners of her eye. I used the white again on the highlights within the dark set part of her eye, some around her lips and on her bottom lip, and a little bit at the tip of her nose, just to bring her forward a little bit. I then decided that I was not exactly tickled with the watercolored flowers, so I decided that in for a dime, in for a dollar, I applied my sponge stamps in very dark purple and the lighter shade applied to it to give a little pizzazz to that area. I then experimented on the leaf, as you can see here, using my Inktense pencils, and I will be showing you that process on the other side. I then decided that these flowers needed to be brought out, so I reapplied the stencil to the modeling paste and used my 15-year-old Jo Sonja Rich Gold and applied it with a makeup sponge. So now we are going to begin to work on the other half of our spread. And I believe that the first thing we will do will be to go down here to this leaf and apply our Inktense pencils using our trusty water brush again. I have picked these Inktense colors to apply to this leaf. This is the mirror image of the leaf that is over here, so we will work on it here. I use these in order that you see them. We have 4 shades of green, a blue that is called iris blue. I believe it's got a little bit more green in it, so it's kind of a blue-green, and a violet, and fuchsia. So let us start now to apply our first shade of Inktense to this leaf. Bringing this into the areas of shading that we will be hoping to see blend together in this leaf. The third, we will bring it out a little bit to the edges and a little bit in here for a hopefully mottled leaf effect. And at the tip, I'm going to use some of the lighter apple green and hopefully drag it down into the leaf and just a little bit in the center. And then some of our blue, and I'm using this blue because of the color of her eyes. So I thought, why not include that in the leaf area? A little of a very rather darkish purple, but you will note when we blend that it works rather nicely. And then our fuchsia at last. So you can see that our colors are running together. And now let's see what happens when we add water to these Inktense pencils. And I don't know whether or not many of you have experience with them, but when this dries, it's permanent. You could go over it again with another bit of color, or completely change what you find underneath, because it's not going to move when you add any other medium to the top. Now, if you'll notice, I can bring this green back up into the darker shade. I can follow my greens around to the edge. And here it goes, the Inktense goes right over the little bit of stenciling that I added to the edge. Alrighty. Now let's see what happens when we work these together to really make the Inktense move the color. I'm squeezing the barrel of my water brush so that I can get more water and let the water take over and truly turn this into a watercolored ink. If we decided that we wanted a little more of this darker color on the end, we can apply it while this is still wet and blend this back into the leaf area. So we have our colored leaf. Since I'm going to go on and be working up in this area now, I'm going to take a moment to dry this. Now when this leaf is completely dry, it's permanent. It is not going to move. You can apply other medium to the top and it will stay there and peep through if you would like it to. If you're not happy with it, Gesso is your friend. Cover it up and do it again in another medium. I'm now going to go up and try working for a bit on these flower sections. I'm going to begin, I think, with this section of the back skirt petal, and we will begin with our darker shade. In fact, I'm going to go back to my purple. So for this, I'm going to be using, again, my violet, my fuchsia, and a color called Shiraz. Here, as you can note, I might want something very light, but this is my limited collection of Inktense pencils, so I'm making do and making the best of what I have on hand. I haven't decided what I'm going to do with this yet, but that is a decision for another time. You'll notice I'm following the shadowing of the watercolor. And then I'm going to bring in a little of this other shade, and you notice I'm going a little bit more lightly than I did on the leaf. And since this leaf is under the top leaf, I'm going to bring up some of my Shiraz into that area. Then I'm going to use just a little bit of our fuchsia, and I'm going to leave this section untouched so that we can continue to have somewhat of a light area. In this case, I'm going to work from the light down so as not to drag up dark into the area that I would prefer to stay light. Oh my, isn't that Shiraz a pretty color? I'd forgotten just what a nice shade of pink that is. And now we are bringing it down into the darker area. Now we'll water this section and let nature take its course with the watercolor effect of the Inktense pencil. And I do not believe I'm going to continue doing anything to this because I'm quite happy with that blending, even though I have a bit of a hard line here. I'm going to add a little more water, and there we have that section. If we decide after this is completely dry that maybe we would like to have a little bit more depth of color, then we can just work right over it. Since this is I'm letting this dry because I'm afraid to move any of these pigments around, because I've still got a bit of lightness here that I'm very pleased with. Nope, don't do that, Carol. I'm going to work now in this section, and I'm going to start out with my purple. And I'm going to follow the line of the original watercolor. And I'm also going to do something that I hadn't tried before. I'm going to look at my regular Derwent watercolors, because you'll notice these two puppies. So I'm going to get those out and see if these play well together. Now, these will not be permanent when applied, but let's just say, what if I do this? This is a regular Derwent watercolor pencil. This is called Imperial Purple, and this is called Light Violet. And light violet seems to be just the ticket for this area. Let's add and let's put in some of this nice light violet. I believe on this one also I'm going to work from light in instead of pulling it this way. Here our Inktense and our watercolors are playing together. And the more water that you squeeze out of your pen, a little bit more intense your coloration will be. And the pointed tip on these watercolor pencils are just a boon to anyone that is quite as anal as I am and likes to be sure to drag color from a very tiny pointed area. This does the job. Very lightly, very light application of the watercolor using clear water from the pen tank to try to maintain some of that light. Well, I'm not too unhappy with this mix of watercolor and Inktense pencils by Derwent, but we will proof of the pudding will be after a few days of really letting this dry down in and see what happens. Maybe I'm going to have to visit it again. But right now, I'm going to leave this alone. For my next problem facing us, we have this gold flower kind of staring at us, and I believe that I'm going to be sure that these two leaves are much lighter, at least by half than this one, and have just a little bit more of these colors included. Right now, we're going to look at this and see what we can do. It needs something besides gold. So let me see if I can reapply my stencil. Yes, there it is. Alrighty. Now, I'm not sure exactly what I am going to do to add some coloration, blending to this flower, but I have gotten out a few things that I would like to try, because nothing ventured, nothing gained. So I have my watercolor, my brushes, and I'm trying a new brush. I might be trying a new brush, a Princeton Select Pointed Filbert number 6. And my trusty go-to Winsor & Newton number 7. And as you can see, this is a well-used watercolor brush. My Viva paper towel, which I'm going to use now rather than the store brand. And I have two choices that I might want to employ. I have gouache, and I have my cheat sheet for gouache, which is telling me what each of these colors will look like. But I also have these iridescents. Well, isn't this just a temptation? I think I might try iridescents. Now, I'm not sure what iridescent on iridescent is going to do for us, but we will see. I wonder, because of this pinkness up here, and there will be pinkish tones in these two leaves, I'm thinking I might want to try the iridescent pink here, and maybe even this one. And am I going to want just a touch of that one? Let's water it down so that we can okay, let's see what happens. I'm going to use old trusty standby, even though I've got my new brush sitting there looking at me and probably feeling very let down. Now this section, the section towards the inside of the flower, should be darker, and I don't really want to lose the gold, so I'm just going to try on this leaf just a touch of this very vigorous gold, this very vigorous pink, almost a fuchsia. Here we go. My. Ooh. Let's see what else we might be able to do here. Now, remembering that this is watercolor, I'm going to apply some clean water right to the edges here to see what will happen when nature takes its course. Not so bad. Let's go back to this fuchsia and try it right here. I put the stencil back on because I would like to try to keep the color that I applied to the flower to add a little warmth and pizzazz from going down over the edges of the modeling paste and running into the space between them. My, this doesn't seem to be doing too badly, does it? I'm feeling like this one should be even darker. What color do we have over here? Hiding on me. Ooh, let's see what we have here. I don't know whether it's going to be darker or lighter, but let's give it a try. Right, that's that one. Let's use this one again. Then come up here and try very much a little bit darker shade. Now water the edges so that that can move if it wishes to. And let's see what happens now if I add some of that purple. Maybe right to the edges over here. Maybe right here. One can't get too painterly here because it's probably, oh, I guess one can get painterly. Woohoo! I think I'm liking this. Let's use just get a little bit less of that mauve right there. This is certainly, for such a cheap box of, I think it could have been $4.99 in Michael's. This is certainly seeming to give us some color. Dry that a bit and then we'll have the great reveal. Whoops. Let me remove this plastic. Well, haven't we just found out what iridescent on iridescent can do? That's not half bad. Aren't you agreeing that maybe we have just discovered a fun thing? Now on this flower, I'm going to try other colors in the iridescent because I do not want this flower to be a copy of this one. So, I think I will stop here because I'm going to keep this double spread available for me to play on. Here's my poor little pointed filbert that I did not use, but I will get to it. I'm going to play further on this at another time, but I thought I would bring this out so that you could get an idea of what we have turned our double spread into, what my thoughts are at the moment. I'm thinking before I stop, I want to try to increase my color here. I want to see what happens if we add more of our Neo color gesso mix, if we can get more color around the perimeter of this flower. Alrighty, let's see what happens now. We start in here with our gesso on a damp brush and scrub in this color provided by Neo Color. See if we are going in the right direction here. Oh yes, we certainly did brighten that up, didn't we? Well, on a rainy afternoon, I shall work some more on this to achieve just a little bit more coloring on the background area and a final look at our color explosion. And as one looks, you always think of what else can I do? I'm thinking she's going to have some sort of an earring over here. And I'm going to use a little bit more of this area, this space that we see, but I'm going to be doing that with just pen and ink, maybe some more flowers, designs, whatever. Oh my, isn't that going to be fun? I hope you've enjoyed this rather long and sometimes tedious job that we have done, but we have learned, at least I have, and I hope you have learned some new things. This particularly is a winner. Not being afraid to apply watercolor, the value of Inktense, the fun of using an elegant writer. So if you have enjoyed these 3 lessons, please give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much. Bye-bye.